Have you ever wondered why some of the strongest, most influential people you've ever met don't say much about themselves? They sit quietly, they listen more than they talk, and yet somehow they command the room. It's not because they're hiding, they're protecting their story, their energy, and their power. Now think about this. How much of your life do you give away without realizing it? A quick post on social media, a late night conversation with a coworker, venting to someone you think is a friend. You share your dreams, your struggles, your relationships, your fears. And while it feels harmless in the moment, every piece of personal information you release is a piece of power you're handing over. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The world isn't always kind, and not everyone who listens to your story is rooting for you. Some people are collecting data. They're smiling in your face, nodding while you talk, but deep down, they're making mental notes. Notes they can use to compete with you, to manipulate you, or to tear you down when it suits them. By the time you realize it, the damage is done. You've armed them with the very tools they'll use against you. Think about the last time you overshared. Maybe about a relationship, your finances, or a challenge you were facing. How did that information make its way back to you? Did you hear it twisted in gossip? Did someone throw it in your face? During an argument, did it change the way someone looked at you? This isn't paranoia, this is reality. Every time you give people access to your private world, you gamble with your peace. And most people lose because they assume others will guard their secrets the way they do. That's not how it works. Here's what I want you to sit with. Privacy is not weakness. Privacy is power. The less people know about you, the more control you keep over your life. And the dangerous part about oversharing is that it doesn't just expose your present, it exposes your future. Tell the wrong person your dreams, and suddenly they're competing with you. Share your struggles too freely, and suddenly you're labeled as fragile, unreliable, or the one who can't handle pressure. Put your personal business in the wrong hands, and suddenly you've given someone a weapon they'll aim at you when you least expect it. We live in a world obsessed with exposure. Everyone is broadcasting their lives, relationships, vacations, every little success, every minor failure. But here's the twist. The people who truly hold power don't live like that. They live strategically. They let people see what they want them to see, nothing more. They curate, they filter, they protect, and that's why they win. Because in a world where everyone else is busy talking, they're busy building. So, let me ask you, what are you giving away? Who has access to your deepest fears? Who knows your private battles? Who knows the details of your money, your goals, your relationships? And more importantly, why do they know? What have they done to earn that level of access to your life? If you're honest, the answer for most people is this. They didn't earn it. You just handed it over. And once it's out there, you can't take it back. Tonight, we're going to have a hard conversation. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to challenge you to look at how much of yourself you're leaking into the world and how that's costing you peace, respect, and power. Because here's the truth. The strongest people aren't the ones who fight the hardest battles out loud. They're the ones who know when to stay quiet. They're the ones who guard their privacy like treasure because they know it is treasure. This isn't about isolation. It's not about shutting people out of your life completely. It's about wisdom. It's about discernment. It's about knowing that your personal life isn't a public stage. And not every person who shows interest in you deserves access to the backstage. You are allowed to keep parts of yourself sacred. You are allowed to keep your dreams hidden until they're strong enough to survive the weight of other people's opinions. You are allowed to keep your struggles private until you've turned them into victories. By the end of this, you're going to see privacy differently. You're going to stop confusing openness with authenticity, and you're going to stop confusing silence with weakness. Because silence can be the sharpest weapon you have. And once you master it, once you master the art of protecting your personal life, you'll stop bleeding energy into the wrong places. You'll start walking taller, commanding more respect, and moving with a confidence that comes from knowing no one owns your story but you. So here's a question. Are you ready to stop handing out pieces of yourself like free samples? Are you ready to build a life so strong, so untouchable that no one can sabotage it because they don't even know where to strike? If the answer is yes, then stay with me because what you're about to learn could change the way you live forever. Power and control are words people often misunderstand. Most think power comes from being the loudest in the room, showing off, proving yourself, or constantly displaying how much you've achieved. But real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from exposure. It comes from control of your emotions, control of your choices, and most importantly, control of your personal life. Privacy isn't about hiding. Privacy is about owning. And when you own your story instead of putting it in other people's hands, you control the narrative, you control the outcome, and you control your peace. Let's get brutally honest. The more people know about you, the easier it is for them to predict you, to manipulate you, or even to sabotage you. Think about a game of chess. The person who shows their moves too soon always loses. Strategy requires patience. It requires holding things back until the timing is right. Your life is no different. If you're constantly revealing your every thought, every struggle, every plan, you've already given away the advantage. People don't have to outsmart you. They just have to use the information you gave them. Privacy is not about keeping secrets because you're scared or insecure. Privacy is about creating leverage. The less people know, the harder it is for them to control you. It's about you being the one in charge of what others see and when they see it. That's control. For example, let's say you're working on a big goal, maybe a new career move, a business idea, or even a personal transformation. If you start talking about it to everyone too soon, you open yourself up to doubts, jealousy, criticism, or even someone copying your idea. Suddenly, what was pure and strong in your heart gets diluted by other people's voices. But if you keep it close, nurture it in silence, and only reveal it when it's ready, you protect the integrity of that goal. That's the power of privacy. Now think about relationships. How many times have you seen people broadcast their entire personal life? Who they're dating, every fight, every reconciliation, only for it to become the subject of gossip and what happens when things go wrong. Those same people who smiled at your happiness are now feasting on your pain. Oversharing doesn't just open doors for celebration. It opens doors for judgment. And here's the dangerous part. Once people feel entitled to your personal life, they think they have a say in it. They give unsolicited advice, they make assumptions, and before you know it, you're living for their opinions instead of your truth. Control means you decide what's public and what's private. You get to build layers around yourself so that the most sacred parts of your life are untouchable. That doesn't mean you isolate yourself or trust no one. It means you're intentional. You don't spill your struggles to coworkers who don't have your best interest at heart. You don't announce every move before it's solid. You don't give every detail of your personal life to people who haven't earned that level of access. You create levels of intimacy, and only a select few get into the inner circle. That's not cold, that's wisdom. And let's talk about energy. Every time you reveal your personal life, you're giving away energy, explaining yourself, defending yourself, clarifying yourself. It's exhausting. And most of the time, it's not even necessary. Why? Because not everyone deserves the explanation. When you live with privacy, you protect your energy. You stop wasting it on people who are only curious, not committed to your well-being. Curiosity is not care. Some people want to know your business, not to help you, but to measure you, compare themselves to you, or feel better about their own lives. When you understand that, you stop handing them free access. Privacy also gives you flexibility. When too many people know your plans, you trap yourself. You feel pressured to follow through, even if you change your mind, just because others are watching. But when you move in silence, you give yourself room to pivot, to grow, to shift directions without the burden of outside expectations. Privacy lets you change without apology. That's real freedom. Think about some of the most respected leaders and successful people. They don't announce every detail of their life. They don't share their every move. Instead, they let their results speak. That's why their presence feels powerful. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they'll do next. And that unpredictability creates respect. Mystery is magnetic. When you don't reveal everything, people lean in closer. They wonder, they speculate, and that curiosity amplifies your influence. Too much exposure kills influence. Controlled privacy multiplies it. Here's a real-world analogy. Imagine your personal life is a bank account, Every detail you share is like withdrawing cash. At first, it seems harmless. You spend a little here, a little there, but over time, those withdrawals add up, and suddenly you've got nothing left. Privacy is your savings. It's wealth you protect. The less you withdraw, the more secure you are. And when the time comes to use it, when you decide to reveal something on your terms, it has value, it has impact, because it hasn't been spent carelessly. Now, some people will push back. They'll say, but I want to be authentic. I want to be open. And yes, authenticity matters. But let's get one thing clear. Authenticity doesn't mean exposure. You can be genuine without giving people your diary. You can share lessons without revealing wounds. You can inspire others with your victories without broadcasting every battle. In fact, the most authentic people are those who don't need validation from public opinion. They know who they are, and they don't need to spill everything to prove it. The power of privacy is the power of control. When you protect your personal life, you decide who has access, you decide what they know, and you decide how much influence they can ever have over you. It's about reclaiming the steering wheel of your own life. Instead of letting others drive with the information you've handed them, you keep your hands on the wheel. That's strength. That's security. That's freedom. So I'll ask you this. Are you in control of your story, or have you let others control it because you gave them too much? Every detail you give away is a key, and if you hand out too many keys, don't be surprised when people start walking through doors. They were never meant to open. Privacy is how you lock those doors. Privacy is how you keep the keys in your own hands. And once you understand that, once you embrace that, you'll never look at your personal life the same way again. One of the biggest mistakes people make in life is assuming that everyone who shows up deserves access to them. They believe that because someone is friendly, because someone is close, or because someone is curious, that person should automatically be trusted with personal details. But here's the truth. Not everyone earns the right to know your story. Not everyone deserves to be invited into the inner circle of your life. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you stop bleeding your energy into the wrong hands. Access to you should be earned. Think about it like this. Your life is a house. The living room might be open to anyone who drops by, but the bedroom, the safe, the private spaces, those are reserved for the people who've proven loyalty, respect, and care. Yet so often, people let strangers wander through every room of their house. They hand over the keys without thinking about the consequences. And what happens? People steal, they break, they misuse. The same is true with your personal life. When you hand out information freely, without discernment, you're giving away parts of yourself to people who haven't earned it and don't know how to handle it. Let's talk about why this happens. Many people overshare because they crave connection. They think that being open, vulnerable, and telling their story will create closeness. And sometimes it does, but only with the right people. With the wrong people, it creates danger, because there are those who smile and nod while you pour out your heart. But inside, they're collecting your words like ammunition. They file it away for later. And when the right moment comes, they use it against you. How many times have you heard a so-called friend repeat something you told them in confidence? How many times has a coworker you trusted turned private details into office gossip? That betrayal hurts not because they had the information, but because you gave them the access. And here's the harsh reality. Some people are not interested in your well-being. They are interested in comparison. They want to know your life so they can measure it against theirs. If you're doing well, they feel envy. If you're struggling, they feel relief. Either way, they benefit from knowing. But what do you gain? Nothing. You've given them insight into your life, but they haven't given you anything in return. That's a lopsided exchange, and it's one you need to stop making. Not everyone who shows up deserves your trust. Think of trust like currency. Would you hand out your money to every person you meet on the street? Of course not. You'd guard it, protect it, and only invest it where you knew there was a return. Yet with personal information, people do the opposite. They spend it freely, telling coworkers about relationships, telling casual friends about struggles, telling social media about every high and low. And then they wonder why they feel drained, exposed, or even betrayed. It's because they treated something valuable like it was worthless. Another trap people fall into is believing that family automatically deserves access. But let me challenge that. Blood may connect you, but trust must be earned. Some of the deepest wounds come from family members who took private details and turned them into gossip or judgment. Just because someone is close to you in relation doesn't mean they are close to you in loyalty. You are allowed to create boundaries, even with family. You are allowed to decide what parts of your life remain sacred, even from those who share your DNA. Here's where discernment comes in. Life is about levels. Not everyone belongs on the same level with you. Some people are acquaintances. Some are colleagues. Some are friends. And only a select few deserve the role of confidant. You weaken yourself when you blur those lines. Not every coworker is your friend. Not every neighbor is your ally. Not every person who listens is safe. By being careless with access, you create doors into your life that anyone can walk through. But when you learn to assign levels, you protect your peace. You decide who gets to know what, and you never confuse casual presence with earned trust. Think about the way elite organizations operate. Military, intelligence, even high-level businesses, they don't give out sensitive information to everyone. They compartmentalize. They operate on a need-to-know basis. Why? Because information is power, and not everyone is qualified to handle it. Shouldn't you treat your own life with the same seriousness? You are the CEO of your story, the guardian of your own mission. So why would you give full access to people who haven't proven they belong on your team? Let me give you a real-world analogy. Imagine your phone. It has layers of security, passwords, fingerprints, face recognition. Why? Because it holds sensitive information, your messages, your photos, your financial details. You would never hand that phone unlocked to just anyone. Yet, when you overshare your personal life, you're essentially handing your unlocked phone to strangers. If you wouldn't do it with your phone, why would you do it with your story? Not everyone deserves access to you, and that includes access to your emotions. Some people will deliberately push your buttons just to watch you react. They don't want resolution, they want entertainment. Every time you spill your emotions to the wrong person, you're feeding their appetite for drama. That's why learning restraint is so powerful. When you choose who gets access to your emotions and your story, you starve the people who feed off chaos. You stop being a source of fuel for their games. So let me ask you, who in your life has access? They haven't earned. Who knows things about you that they shouldn't? Who are you giving your time, your energy, and your personal details to without seeing any loyalty or respect in return? If you're honest, you'll realize there are people holding keys to your life who never should have had them. And reclaiming your power means changing the locks. It means revoking access. It means creating boundaries so strong that only those who prove themselves get past the front gate. Here's the empowering part. When you restrict access, your life becomes lighter. You're no longer weighed down by the opinions of people who don't matter. You stop performing for an audience that shouldn't even be in the theater. You reclaim your energy, your time, and your focus. And those who truly deserve you, the ones who've proven trust and loyalty, will respect your boundaries. Because real people don't demand access. They earn it. So remember this. Not everyone deserves to know your struggles. Not everyone deserves to celebrate your victories. Not everyone deserves to be in your inner world. Your personal life is not public property. It is sacred ground, and only those who walk with respect, loyalty, and care should ever be allowed inside. Everyone else, they can stay at the door. There's a hard truth most people don't want to face. Toxic people don't just exist, they thrive, and the place they thrive most is in the open space you give them. They don't necessarily need to be smarter than you, stronger than you, or more talented than you. All they need is access, and the access they crave is your vulnerability. The more you reveal, the more you expose your fears, your insecurities, your struggles, the more you hand them the very weapons they'll later use to control you, diminish you, or break you down. Think about it. Toxic people operate like hunters. They're always scanning the environment, looking for weaknesses, listening for cracks in the armor. And unlike healthy people who might use your vulnerability to connect, to comfort, or to support you, toxic people use it for advantage. They'll take note, of what makes you insecure. They'll memorize the topics that trigger you, and then at the right time, they'll push those buttons. It's not an accident. It's not random. It's intentional. They're feeding on what you've handed them. Here's a danger. Most toxic people don't look toxic at first. They look attentive. They look empathetic. They listen when others don't. They nod. They encourage you to open up. They make you feel like you can trust them. But behind that facade, they're collecting information. They're like a smiling thief, quietly emptying your pockets while telling you everything is safe. That's why oversharing is dangerous. The people who seem the most curious about your life are often the ones who plan to use it against you. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine telling a coworker about your struggles at home, maybe financial stress or relationship tension. At first, they seem supportive. They might even share a story of their own to make you feel safe. But later in a meeting, when you're pushing for a promotion, that same coworker casually mentions how you've been under a lot of personal stress. They frame it as concern, but the seed of doubt is already planted in your boss's mind. You didn't sabotage yourself in that moment. You did it when you gave that person access to your vulnerability. Toxic people don't thrive on your strength. They thrive on your openness when it isn't guarded. They thrive when you confuse empathy with loyalty. They thrive when you mistake curiosity for care. And they thrive when you assume that because someone listened, it means they can be trusted. That's how they win. Not because they're more capable than you, but because they use your words, your admissions, your struggles as fuel for their agenda. Now, some of you might be thinking, but isn't it healthy to be vulnerable? Isn't it important to share? And yes, vulnerability is powerful, but only in the right context. Vulnerability should be shared with people who have proven that they will hold it with care. People who have shown loyalty through actions, not just words. Vulnerability is intimacy, not exposure. There's a difference. Healthy vulnerability deepens real connections, but unguarded vulnerability in the presence of toxic people doesn't create closeness. It creates control. Think about how gossip spreads. Most toxic people don't even need to twist your words. They just repeat them in the wrong places. You vent about a personal struggle, and suddenly it's not your story anymore. It's their entertainment. They'll frame it as concern, but what they're really doing is feeding their need for significance by broadcasting your weakness. And here's the insidious part. Once your story is out there, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever repeats it. That's the cost of vulnerability in the wrong hands. Let's take this deeper. Toxic people often test you. They'll drop little questions, small comments, probing for a reaction. They want to see what gets you emotional, what makes you defensive, what makes you over-explain. Every reaction you give is information. Every detail you share is a note in their playbook. And when the moment comes that they need leverage, maybe in an argument, maybe in competition, maybe in a social setting, they'll pull out what they've been storing. Suddenly they know exactly what to say to embarrass you, to destabilize you, to undermine your confidence. And the worst part, you gave them that power. That's why protecting your personal life is not just about boundaries. It's about survival in a world where not everyone has good intentions. If you think this sounds harsh, look back at your own experiences. How many times have you regretted telling someone too much? How many times did that safe space end up becoming a weapon? How many times did you wish you'd kept quiet, only to learn too late that not everyone who smiles is your ally? There's a saying, loose lips sink ships. It wasn't written for social media, it was written for war. And life, in many ways, is a battlefield. Every careless disclosure, every overshared struggle, every impulsive vent is like giving the enemy your map. Why would you hand over the blueprint to your own defenses? Why would you provide instructions on how to break you down? That's exactly what oversharing does. It gives toxic people a manual for your destruction. And let's not forget, toxic people aren't always outsiders. Sometimes they're coworkers. Sometimes they're people you thought were friends. Sometimes they're even family. That makes it harder because you want to believe that blood or history means safety. But reality doesn't work that way. Loyalty is proven by actions, not titles. And some of the most dangerous betrayals come from the ones closest to you because they have the most access. So how do you protect yourself? By becoming selective. By treating your vulnerability like currency, not like confetti. You don't hand out cash to strangers, and you shouldn't hand out your inner world either. You learn to observe before you trust. You watch how people handle small pieces of information before you hand over bigger ones. If they gossip about others, they'll gossip about you. If they minimize your small struggles, they'll exploit your big ones. People show you who they are. Believe them before you give them access. And here's the empowering shift. When toxic people realize they can't access your vulnerability, they lose interest. They thrive on drama, and when you stop feeding it, you starve them. Silence becomes your strength. Privacy becomes your shield. They can't use against you what they don't know. They can't twist what you never said. They can't expose what you kept sacred. That's how you take away their power, by never giving it to them in the first place. So ask yourself right now, who in your life thrives on your openness? Who lights up when you share pain but disappears when you share joy? Who remembers your lowest moments better than your victories? Those are the toxic ones. And the only way to stop them from feeding is to close the door, to guard your vulnerability like it's treasure, because it is. At the end of the day, toxic people only have as much power as you allow. And when you stop handing them the keys, when you stop narrating your weaknesses, when you stop giving them the manual to your soul, you take back control. They may still circle around waiting for cracks, but they'll find none. And that silence, that mystery, is what makes you untouchable. There's something magnetic about a person you can't fully read. Someone who walks into a room and doesn't feel the need to explain, justify, or broadcast who they are. Their silence makes you lean in. Their restraint makes you curious. Their mystery commands respect, and that's because mystery is power. In a world where everyone is oversharing, where every detail of people's lives is on display, the ones who hold back stand out. They become unpredictable, untouchable, and unforgettable. Let's face it, human beings are naturally curious. We want to know what others are thinking, what they're feeling, what they're planning. And when someone refuses to give us that access, our curiosity intensifies. Think about the leaders you admire most, or even the most magnetic figures in history. Were they the ones telling everyone everything about themselves? Or were they the ones who revealed just enough in them, inspire, but never enough to be predictable? The truth is, mystery creates presence. It creates authority. It makes people respect you because they can't put you in a box. Now here's the mistake most people make. They believe respect is earned by proving themselves, by talking more, showing more, sharing more. They think if I just explain my story, people will understand me. If I just tell them what I've been through, they'll admire me. But it doesn't work like that. Oversharing doesn't build respect. It dilutes it. When you reveal every detail, every opinion, every thought, you strip away the very thing that creates impact scarcity. People don't value what's abundant. They value what's rare. And your privacy, your ability to hold back, makes you rare. Mystery doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you're fake. It doesn't mean you're hiding who you are. Mystery simply means you don't hand everything over on a silver platter. You reveal selectively, intentionally. You let people see what you want them to see and nothing more. That's not manipulation. That's strategy. You don't owe everyone full access to your mind, your emotions, or your personal life. The more you keep sacred, the more authority you hold. Think about how this plays out in relationships. The person who constantly overshares often ends up being taken for granted. Why? Because nothing is left to the imagination. Every struggle, every thought, every detail is exposed. There's no intrigue, no depth left unexplored. But when you practice restraint, when you share thoughtfully and sparingly, you create intrigue. You give others the sense that there's more beneath the surface, layers they haven't earned the right to see yet. And that sense of depth is what creates respect. In the workplace, mystery is just as powerful. Imagine two employees. One is always talking about their personal life, who they're dating, what they're struggling with, how much money they're making or not making. The other stays professional, speaks when necessary, and keeps their private life private. Which one do you think commands more respect from their peers and leaders? The second one. Why? Because mystery creates focus. When people can't distract themselves with your personal details, They focus on your competence, your results, your presence. That's what earns authority. Mystery also protects you from being predictable. And unpredictability is powerful when people can't guess your next move. They can't plan against you. They can't box you in. They can't manipulate what they don't understand. Think of it like a game of poker. The player who shows their hand too soon always loses. The one who keeps a straight face, who never reveals their cards until the right moment, that's the one who wins. Your life is no different. If people always know exactly what you're thinking, feeling, or planning, you've given them the advantage. But if they don't know, if they have to guess, you hold the power. Now, some people will resist this idea. They'll say, but isn't it dishonest to hold back? Isn't that being closed off? No. It's being intentional. Being mysterious doesn't mean you lie. It doesn't mean you pretend to be someone you're not. It means you understand that not everyone deserves the same level of access. You give parts of yourself only to those who've earned it, and you let the rest of the world experience the version of you that protects your power. That's not dishonesty. That's self-respect. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine two books. One has every page available online for free. You can read it anytime, anywhere. The other is rare, locked in a glass case, only available in select libraries or collections. Which one do people treat with more care? Which one carries more value? It's the rare one. Why? Because scarcity creates respect. Your life is the same way. If you hand out every detail, people stop valuing it. But when you guard your story, when you create layers of mystery, people approach you with more care. Mystery also creates space for growth. When you don't reveal everything, you give yourself room to change without being trapped by the expectations of others. If you've told the world about every plan you've ever had, you feel pressured to stick to them, even when they no longer fit you. But when you move quietly, you can pivot, evolve, and reinvent yourself as needed. That flexibility is only possible when you don't overshare. Silence gives you the freedom to grow without apology. And let's talk about attraction. Not just romantic attraction, but the magnetic pull you have in any area of life. What makes people lean in? Curiosity. And curiosity only exists when there's mystery. If you want people to respect you, to listen when you speak, to wonder what you're thinking, then you must stop narrating every detail of your life. Let your silence speak. Let your actions speak. Let your presence create the weight that your words alone cannot. That's what makes people respect you. Not how much you share, but how much you withhold. So ask yourself, are you giving people too much? Are you stripping yourself of mystery by constantly explaining, defending, or broadcasting? Or are you creating depth by holding back, by letting people discover you over time, by making them earn access to the most private parts of your world? Respect doesn't come from exposure. Respect comes from restraint. When you master mystery, you master influence. People listen more closely when you speak because they know you don't waste words. They value your story because they know it's not handed out cheaply. They treat you with more respect because they can't predict you, can't label you, can't diminish you. You're not fully accessible, and that's exactly why you're powerful. At the end of the day, mystery is not about creating distance. It's about creating presence. It's about carrying yourself in a way that says, I don't need to prove myself by telling you everything. My strength speaks for itself. And that's why mystery commands respect. Because in a noisy world, silence is not weakness, it's dominance. When you think about the strongest structures in the world, fortresses, castles, or even modern vaults, they all share one thing in common: protection. They're built not just to stand tall, but to withstand attack. They're designed to safeguard what's valuable inside. And your personal life deserves the same treatment. You need to build a fortress around it, not to shut the world out, not to live in isolation, but to protect the things that matter most. Your peace, your focus, your relationships, your future. Because when you guard your private life, you don't just protect yourself from toxic people or gossip. You create the space to actually live more fully. And here's the paradox. The less you share, the more freedom you have. When you stop constantly explaining yourself, you stop living under the weight of other people's opinions. You stop seeking validation for your choices. You stop wasting time worrying about whether others approve. Instead, you live, you move, you build, you grow. Sharing less doesn't make your life smaller. It makes it stronger. Because your energy is no longer leaking out into conversations that don't matter or people who don't deserve it. Think about how much time people waste narrating their lives. They post every detail on social media. They vent to anyone who will listen. They reveal their dreams before they've even started working on them. And then when those dreams falter, they feel embarrassed because everyone was watching. When you overshare, you turn your life into a stage performance. You start living for the audience instead of yourself. But when you build a fortress, when you keep your plans close until they're solid, you give yourself the gift of privacy. You get to fail in peace. You get to grow in silence. You get to succeed on your own terms. Building a fortress doesn't mean you never share. It means you share with intention. It means you choose who gets to step inside the walls and who stays outside the gates. Most people should never get past the gates. They can see the outside of your fortress, your professionalism, your kindness, your presence, but they don't get to walk inside. Only a select few, the people who have proven loyalty, respect, and care, get access to the inner chambers of your life. That's not cruelty. That's discernment. That's wisdom. Let's use an analogy. Imagine your personal life is like a rare jewel. Would you carry it around in your open hand for anyone to grab? Of course not. You'd keep it locked away, protected, maybe only shown to people who you knew would treasure it, not exploit it. Your privacy is the same way. The less people see, the more valuable it becomes. And when you choose carefully who gets access, you ensure that your life isn't mishandled by people who don't know its worth. Now, here's the beautiful part of building a fortress. When you protect your personal life, you free yourself from constant noise. You free yourself from gossip, judgment, comparison, and manipulation. You stop carrying the burden of other people's opinions. You stop feeling like you have to justify every choice. Your fortress becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can focus on what truly matters. And in that sanctuary, you build strength. You grow. You achieve. Because all of your energy is concentrated inside the walls, not scattered outside them. Let's talk about what happens when you don't build a fortress. Imagine telling everyone about your financial struggles. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with your own stress, you're also dealing with judgment, unsolicited advice, and maybe even people taking advantage of your vulnerability. Imagine broadcasting your relationship issues. Now, every argument, every reconciliation is being dissected by outsiders. Imagine announcing every career move before it's official. Suddenly, you feel pressured to succeed, not because you want it, but because you don't want to be embarrassed. That's what happens when you have no fortress. You give people the power to intrude, to criticize, and to dictate how you live. But when you build strong walls around your life, those same scenarios look very different. You work on your finances quietly, without the noise of judgment. You strengthen your relationship without outsiders interfering. You make career moves without announcing them. And when the results finally show, they speak louder than any explanation ever could. That's the power of a fortress. It's not about hiding, it's about protecting the process until the product is undeniable. Now let's address the fear. Some people have the fear of being misunderstood. If they don't share, they think if I don't explain myself, people might assume the wrong things. And maybe they will. But here's the question, so what? Does their assumption change your reality? Does their opinion alter your truth? Of course not. The need to constantly explain is a trap. The strongest people in the world are often misunderstood, and they don't care because they know where they're going. When you build a fortress, you stop living for explanations and start living for results. Another benefit of building a fortress is that it makes you unpredictable. When people can't read your every move, they can't anticipate your next step. That unpredictability keeps you safe. It also keeps people intrigued. You become harder to define, harder to control, harder to manipulate. People respect what they can't easily access. That's why leaders, innovators, and visionaries often carry an air of mystery. They don't let everyone in. They reveal selectively, strategically, and that's exactly why their presence feels powerful. Building a fortress is also about emotional discipline. It's about not reacting to every provocation, not spilling your feelings just because someone asks, not handing over your struggles in exchange for momentary relief. It's about sitting with yourself, learning to process privately, and only opening up to people who've proven they deserve it. When you stop broadcasting every emotion, you stop giving toxic people ammunition. You take back control, and that control gives you peace. So here's the challenge. Look at your life right now. Where are the cracks in your fortress? Where are you oversharing? Who has access to your private life that hasn't earned it? And what can you start protecting today? Maybe it's your financial goals. Maybe it's your relationship. Maybe it's a dream you're working on. Quietly. Whatever it is, ask yourself, does the world need to know this right now? Or am I safer keeping it inside the walls until it's ready? The less you share, the more you live. Because life isn't about performing, it's about experiencing, building, and protecting what matters most. When you build a fortress, you're not shutting people out. You're elevating yourself above the noise. You're creating a safe space for your dreams to grow, for your relationships to flourish, and for your energy to stay strong. And when the time comes to reveal what you've built, the impact will be undeniable. Not because you told the world, but because you showed the world. In the end, building a fortress is not about fear. It's about freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms, to protect your peace, and to move in silence until your results make the noise. Share less, live more. That is how you create a life. No one can sabotage, no one can diminish, and no one can control. That is how you win. Privacy is not about hiding, it's about protecting. It's about choosing to live intentionally, guarding what matters most, and refusing to hand your peace to people who haven't earned it. In a world where everyone is oversharing, where noise drowns out meaning, your silence becomes your strength, your restraint becomes your shield, and your mystery becomes your power. Never forget this. The less access people have to your private life, the more control you keep over it. Don't waste your energy explaining, justifying, or performing. Save that energy for building, for growing, for living. When you share less, you live more. When you guard your life, you reclaim your freedom. And when you carry yourself with mystery, you command respect without saying a word. So let this be your reminder. Not everyone deserves access to you. Protect your story, protect your power, and protect your peace, because your life is too valuable to be put on display. The strongest move you can ever make is to live it, not broadcast it.